Welcome to the Litigation Psychology Podcast, brought to you by Courtroom Sciences, Inc. I am Dr. Steve Wood. Back with me again, Dr. Bill Kanasky.
Yo.
I want to start this podcast off with what I would like to call the Kanasky rant. I know you got some things you want to rant about, Bill. So what is it this week?
Yeah, I think we need to make this an official, because I pretty much start most podcasts like this. Not all of them. I think just the ones with you. I have a guest on. I try not to rant. I have a laundry list of things. By the way, maybe you may notice you haven't mentioned my attire. I'm wearing workout clothes right now. Do you want to know why I'm wearing workout clothes?
Why is that? Because you had to work out?
I had to lift weights for 90 minutes just to get ready for this podcast, because I had to get the mental, just negative energy out to start this rant. And remember, there's a famous line from a movie, which there's no way you remember this. Remember this line? I'm running in the red. Running in the red. Don't mess with me. What movie?
One of the greatest, probably Quentin Tarantino's greatest movie, Pulp Fiction.
There you go. John Travolta.
That's
running
right.
in the red. A please would be nice. He says, pretty please. Pretty please with sugar on top. Clean the bleeping car. Yeah, I don't want to get us a X rating on this or R rating.
No, that would stay away
podcast.
From that.
But yeah, I'm going to start the rant. Okay, so my first rant. Steve, are you a fan of chicken wings?
I am a fan of chicken wings. Okay,
I go out last night. I order a dozen wings. Okay, now I can't do the hot stuff anymore as I've aged. It tastes great, but like I'm just ruined for the next 3 days. Are you a hot guy, a medium guy, a mild guy?
I'm a hot guy, but I am actually ruined for the next few days too. But I look at it as the price to pay.
Well, yeah, in Los Angeles, you're taking Prilosec like M&Ms.
That's right.
So I'm like leaning towards the like honey garlic, something a little light in the stomach. So I get 12 wings last night. Guess how much it cost?
Where were you? In Orlando?
Yeah, Orlando. Regular restaurant. 12
$13. $13.
$21.50.
Gee.
$21.50. And I'm like, what in the bleep is this? And she's like, it's the chicken wing shortage. I mean, my gas is $4. Now I'm paying $21.50 for a dozen wings. Good. I think we need to raise our hourly rates. This is I'm not gonna be able to 40 chicken wings.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like I was going, I ain't get the lobster, I ain't get the filet. I got chicken wings, damn it. $21.50. Oh, shit myself when I got the bill. Anyway, that's just my first inform. But here's my formal rant. And I've done this before. It's a repeat of a previous rant, but I have to say it again. Social inflation.
Yeah, I saw your LinkedIn post.
My LinkedIn. Okay, so we've had several very nice defense victories lately. Okay, and a couple of them were with admitted liability, meaning you're paying. Okay, you are paying, and plaintiffs went high. We counter anchored, came in low, prepped witnesses, helped with voir dire juror questionnaire. Damages come in low. Huge win for the defense. So what happened to social inflation? Did it just magically disappear in Des Moines, Iowa? I mean, we're in Atlanta, Georgia. I want to know where, because here's the thing. Every time there's a loss, in social inflation, they blame the jurors. You know what it's like, Steve? They blame the jurors. And here's the thing. It's like the guy, and you know this guy, because I'm sure you have a friend like this that makes you crazy. I cannot stand the guy when his team loses, he blames the refs.
Right.
They blame the refs.
Yeah.
They blame the refs. What happened? Oh man, those refs sucked. Those refs were terrible. Like, well, maybe you got outmaneuvered. Maybe you got outworked, and you turned the ball over 10 times. It's unbelievable how this is such a convenient excuse that it makes no social psychological sense, because here's the thing. It's either it's there or it's not there. You can't have it both ways. And what I've seen a lot in these insurance magazines and these articles is when you see one of these nuclear verdicts, first thing is social inflation. These jurors are nuts. But then a week later, the defense wins. Well, we put together this great case. Well, yeah. Meaning, it kind of points out the reasons why you're losing. And it's not social inflation. It's lack of preparation, maybe lack of weaponry, because your client sucks. That's a potential possibility. Your witnesses stunk it up on the stand, right? You didn't plan for jury selection really well. Just this social inflation topic, absolutely. I did a webinar, I think I told you this before, and it was with the insurance industry as one of 5, and I was the 5th to talk, and all 4 of them like social inflation. So that was the problem. And I go, I don't believe in it. It's a myth. And everybody started yelling at me. And my response was, okay, well, if that's the case, if social inflation is the reason for nuclear verdicts, it would be impossible for the defense to win, right? I mean, if all jurors are pissed off at companies, all jurors are angry, okay? Jurors are upset about X, Y, and Z, all right? Post-COVID, post-Floyd, all this stuff, right? If that's true, the defense is screwed every time, aren't they?
Right. Yeah, just there's no reason to do anything. Just walk in there, take it, and get out.
Take your medicine and get out. But no, the defense, and this is what no one talks about at these seminars, right? The defense wins a lot of cases. And it's convenient because when they win, it's a team. Now, we really stuck it to them. But when you lose, it's social inflation. It's blaming the refs, Steve. I'm just telling you, it's blaming the refs. You cannot blame. Do it unless it's a Duke Carolina basketball game. Different story, because the refs are biased towards Duke. See, I just did it.
There you did. Yep.
See, Duke Carolina, blame those refs all day because they're pro Duke. Everybody knows. And that is the Kanasky rant. Wow, that was nice. I feel a lot better right now.
Good. I'm glad I'm here. I'm always here for your therapy when you're.
It's like a therapeutic. This podcast is therapeutic.
Yeah, I think one of the things we want to talk about today, though, you and I, one of the things we keep seeing over and over and over and over again is this obsession with jury instructions.
Obsession. You said the word, Steve. Obsession.
The thought that the jury instructions actually matter is being the first one, right? Maybe I'm going to go on a rant here, but a lot of times we end up giving these 40-page jury instructions to our mock jurors, and I mean, if they're not all asleep by the time I'm done reading the first page, I'm extremely surprised. Then you finally get to the end, then they get in the jury room, and then as they're working through the verdict form, they don't know what any other words mean. And now, mind you, we even leave the jury instructions with them in the room, but never once do they ever actually pick them up to look at them or to see them, right? So then they just go in there and they have no clue about any of the terminology that it becomes so crucial to the case, right? So for example,
well, hold on. Before you even go there, okay? So we're in California last week and did 2 mock trials, and I made the mistake because I'm behind the two-way mirror, and I listened to you on day 1 read the full jury instructions to the jurors before deliberations. Okay, right? I fell asleep.
I believe it.
I was like going to stab myself in the face with my ink pen to try to wake up. It was terrible. It was awful. And that's why I have you do that job, because if I did that job, I would fall asleep while I was reading them.
Yeah.
And now, before we go into some various definitions that make jurors nuts, again, without mentioning names, describe the defense attorney obsession with these instructions. I mean, it's out of control.
Yeah, I mean, we've had it before where attorneys will get very angry at us when we're saying, hey, we're going to go read this jury instruction. We don't need this. We don't need this. We need to take this out. It needs to be really truncated. It needs to be really concise. And it's like, no. All these matter. They have to know this. They have to. If they don't hear this, we're not getting a good read. They have to know this. And like I said, at the end of the day, they don't listen. They don't know. They don't understand. So really, you're wasting your time and everyone else's time even trying to write those up, because at the end of the day, like I said, they're not listening. I can tell you they're not listening. They're sleeping is what they're doing.
And listen, it's a horrible position for the jurors to be in. A recommendation that we can talk about after these horrendous definitions is you can prime these jurors in closing argument to kind of define those things for them. Yeah. Right before, because when the judge reads it, it's just not gonna stick. But so the obsession with jury instructions, there's a couple of them, so we're watching the jurors deliberate, and of course they're not understanding any of the instructions and they go off the rails. What's the first one? I know which one makes me nuts, but which one makes you nuts? Because we have like a top 3 or 4 that week by week it's almost impossible for these folks to understand.
I would say, and we just saw it recently, I would say anything related to like proximate cause or substantial factor. I think
number one, it's the number 1 seed in the East. Oh
yeah.
man, number 1 overall seed in the tournament has to be proximate cause, causation.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Half the time they can't even pronounce the word, let alone know what it understands or what it means or how it applies to the law or how they're supposed to answer the question within the context of that definition.
I mean, absolutely awful. The jurors, what was the question from the jury when they said, hey, we need help? We came in, they go, what does substantial factor mean?
Yeah. My response to them was, well, a couple things.
The factor that's substantial.
One was, I read it to you when I was doing the jury instructions that you weren't paying attention to. And then 2, I said, it's in the jury instructions that are right in front of your face.
Yeah, and the 40 pages in front of you, good luck finding that. And that's the other. So even though the instructions go in there with them, good luck, right?
Yeah.
It's like going through a IKEA manual. You get that, that furniture from IKEA. You're trying to look through this, and that's why no one follows those instructions, because you can't follow.
Yeah. No, it took them, I think, once I told them it was in the jury instructions, I think it literally took them probably a good 5 to 10 minutes to actually filter through and actually find the definition in the jury instructions.
Yeah.
And those were truncated.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, and that's just overall, even if you explained it well, I mean, I think you'll agree with me. I mean, it's my experience that the juror brain it loves to skip over the 3. So there's a 3-step process, right? And you don't tell them this. They should rewrite jury instructions to say this. It's a 3-step process, right? Negligence, and you define that yes or no. The second step's called causation. You got to answer that yes or no. And if you answer yes to both, you go to damages. Right. What these jurors love to do is they answer yes to one and just assume, well, shit, if you got negligence, then there must be causation. They check that box in 7 seconds, and then they move on to damages, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean by the time they get there, right, by the time they've talked about negligence, they've already talked about everything. So you see, like you said, the causation is almost a foregone conclusion by the time they get to it. Now,
here's the problem with that, and I've seen it work, but boy, it takes a lot of work from defense counsel. There are cases in which the defense has a causation defense, which is about the worst possible position to be in, next to admitted liability. Honestly, admitted liability is probably easier to deal with, right? Because you keep a lot of bad stuff out, and it's your damages argument against theirs, less anger, right? With these causation cases, it's really, really difficult, because I think when jurors don't understand these concepts, they tend to give the benefit of the doubt because they want to, move forward with the process. But if attorneys don't bring that issue, like for example, you have a causation defense case, you got to bring this up in jury. By the way, how many voir dire questions have you seen on causation? Yeah, not many, and that's not good.
Right.
That's not good, because I think you can start educating them and indoctrinating them in the jury selection process. I think on all cases they should be doing that. Obviously not admitted liability, but any case, where there's negligence and causation, or just if you're admitting negligence but not causation, I think there's ways to do that in voir dire by defining it, asking, does everybody understand this? And a lot of hands will not go up.
Right.
And you can start to educate them and maybe even provide some examples to get their head around that. So then when they hear your opening statement, they're like, aha, 2 hours ago, that guy just gave me an example. This is similar. And then by the time and then you do it again in closings, right? And you remind them, then by the time they get to deliberations, they've heard it a couple times, and these statistical odds of them being able to get it at that point is reasonable. I will tell you this, 0% of the time, if you just rely on the instruction, Epic failure. Am I right on that?
No, you're absolutely right. And we saw it initially when the jurors didn't understand what substantial factor was. We ended up doing it again, and the attorney did a good job on the second day of explaining substantial factor in the way that jurors could understand, and they got it. And by the time, it's like you said, when it got to the jury instructions, they already kind of had a sense of it. And when I asked them later, like, did you guys actually understand it? And then I asked somebody, can you say it in your own words? They were actually able to do it because, to your point, they had heard it before. So it wasn't the first time when they're half asleep listening to the jury instructions.
Yeah. And another one is the whole burden of proof issue. It's not quite as bad. We're going to give burden of proof the number 2 seed in the Midwest in the tournament. They, believe it or not, a lot of jurors jump right to that criminal burden. Even though you just told them, and they're like, no, beyond a reasonable doubt. And then you have to walk in and be like, okay, timeout. Thing is, in a real trial, you can't walk in and go, hey, get back on track and redefine things. In the mocks you've done, have you seen that happen quite a bit?
All the time. So, we hadn't even talked about this, about what our list was, but my number 2 was actually burden of proof, because absolutely every single time it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And yeah, like you said, you have to go in and say, no. Like and once again, you've read it in the instructions, you spend the time going through preponderance of the evidence means this and reading it. And then as soon as they go in, right, it's from all the TV shows, all the crime shows, and all the things that they've watched. It's beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah, I think for number 3 here, and we'll give, I think we're going to give this one the number 2 seed in the Western bracket, is negligence.
Yeah.
That jurors tend to struggle because they know there's a bad outcome, right? And so a lot of people just assume, well, there must be negligence, which is why, now back to voir dire, you don't see many causation questions, which is a problem. You and I need to work more on that and really sell that to our clients. The vast majority of the questions for voir dire are negligence based, right? Yeah. My personal favorite being, because this case has made it all the way to the courtroom, the defense must have done something wrong, right? Like who agrees with that? And so what you see is in jury selection, there's this amazing focus on negligence, which, by the way, I'm not disagreeing with that. I think that the causation stuff needs to be worked into that. And it's a really difficult, concept. It's tedious. And there's some percentage of jurors, I don't care how many times you explain it, I don't think they're going to get it, are they?
No. And what's funny is you can hear them talk about negligence just kind of in a colloquial type of way and stuff, but the legal definition of it, I don't think they truly understand, because we hear people say, well, they were being negligent. But like I said, what their meaning of negligent is versus what the legal definition of negligence is are often vastly different.
Okay, I'm gonna switch. We haven't talked about the South bracket yet. The number 1 seed in the South bracket is past economic and past non-economic damages. Oh my God. Number 1 seed in the South. Number 1, Kentucky didn't get it. Nope. Past economic and non-economic damages. Did you see that jury try to figure that out? They're like, well, past. Well, like from when he started working, from when they just don't understand the timeline of what it is. And then they can make some huge mathematical errors because they don't know when it starts and when it stops, right?
Right. Yeah. Some of them you'll have small numbers because they get it. And then other ones you'll have these wildly huge numbers that even when the plaintiff counsel was offering up their past meds and all past lost economics and all that stuff like that, their numbers are even higher than the plaintiff attorney even offered up. So like, where do you get these numbers from?
Unbelievable. Let's go back to the East bracket and the 5 seed. Now, Steve, you're aware of the 12-5 upset, right? That's the one everybody picks. So this number 5, it's worth bringing up, but it's more damages. But it's the future non-economic damages is brought. Future economic, I mean, they're putting together some formula on what this person would have made, right? And it's just a math formula. No one really disagrees with it. You do have sometimes they have that, well, this 19-year-old could have been an astronaut. He could have been working for NASA, or he could have been the next Bill Gates, right? And some of that gets crazy. But I think jurors are fairly reasonable on the future future non-economic damages, right? I think this is where you see a lot of punitive attitudes sneaking in. I mean, how many times have you heard it happened the other day?
Yep.
The word punitive comes up in that juror discussion, and there's not even a punitive question on the verdict form.
Yeah.
They think it's part of the damages, like that's their job. And so again, now you've seen this quite a bit, right? I mean, damages go through the roof. Yeah,
and it goes back to, I think, really it goes back to reptile theory, right? Sending a message and all that. You're like, whoa, a second, we're not sending a message with compensatories, but they can't get out of their own way as far as that goes. So absolutely, it's almost baked in. And then if you have punitives in the case, all of a sudden now you got more problems, right? Because part of your compensatories were already punitives. Once you get the punitives, now you're just getting whacked again for what you already got whacked for in the compensatory.
It's a double whacking. Now I'm going to give the punitive damages instruction. I'm going to give I think they're like a 10 seed in the Midwest. I don't see that as big in the. I think maybe that could be the clearest definition on the entire form. If you have a case of punitive, I mean, it says wanton, reckless, deliberate indifference. They tend to get that, right?
Right.
But all this other stuff we're talking about, wow. So I think now, did I leave anybody out? Did anybody not make the tournament here?
No, I think we're good. We had some bubble teams, but I think everybody.
Allocation. We're going to sneak one. A bubble team that sneaks in. We'll give them the number 16 seed out west. Is just the whole process of allocation of fault when you have, you have plaintiff on the line and they have to break down the percentages. I think that's probably the easiest one, except when you have a jury panel that can't add to 100.
Well, that
oftentimes, that's a problem. But what I do see, I think that's where you see some of the best discussions. And here's the other thing that doesn't, because the whole jury form is illogical. People tend to start, like say allocation of negligence or fault or whatever is question number 5. The discussion always starts there. Right. Because what you're supposed to do is yes, no, party 1, yes, no, party 2, causation, party, right? And you're going there, and then you get to allocation. Usually what happens is the jurors sit down, they don't even look at the verdict form, and they just start talking, and they start assigning proportions, right? Of blame. And so I think that's how the human brain likes to process information. I think that's where a lot of jurors get started. And I think of all the questions that they have to answer, I think that's probably the most understandable and probably the least struggle that we get. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I think to your point about how the human brain works, a lot of times we get pushback from clients and they're like, oh, get in there, fix it. They're not supposed to be at an allocation right yet. But to your point, that's how they do it, right? That's how they do it. Happens, as I always say, right? It's how the sausage gets made. You would never get a chance to see that in a real trial. You just happen to get a peek behind the window in this, but that's how jurors are doing it in real cases. So
that's how they do it. And I feel bad for the jurors because again, the whole system is completely illogical, right? You have a judge saying, listen to both sides. Don't make any decisions. Oh, by the way, here's your instruction. You go back in this room and make a group decision. Okay, Steve, that's not what happens. That's never happened in the history of any lawsuit. Okay. The jurors start leaning heavily one way. Actually, they start leaning in jury selection. They start more heavily leaning after openings. And then once they start hearing key witnesses, boom, they're locked in. And so by the time they even hear these instructions, they're locked in. I would think, I mean, based on 18 years of doing this and we watch the data, I don't see a lot of juror movement after closings or rebuttals. You may get one here, one there, right? But you don't see like 10 jurors after a closing move over to the other side, right?
No, to your point, and I think this is a whole nother podcast topic later.
Yes.
But we've had conversations with attorneys about that too, right? Where they like, wait, so it's not over after my opening statements. It's like, no, No. And to your point, it's not, they're not waiting until your closing statement either. So it's not like you need to spend your whole closing statement trying to convince everybody who was on the fence. Like you said, by that time, all you're really doing, as we told this attorney, is giving them firepower and giving them snippets and giving them things to go in and use in jury deliberations. It's not like all of a sudden they're going to see the light in your closing arguments that they never saw earlier on in the trial.
Yeah, it's just not how the brain's wired. And any juror that does jump all over the place is typically not a very strong juror, and they tend to be all over the place in deliberations too. And they tend to get beaten down. So I think, okay, so lesson learned to kind of wrap up this topic. I think you need to take the time starting in jury selection to get some of these issues out there, particularly the causation issue. And we can work with our clients to develop those questions. Obviously, I think the negligence issues are already there, but then particularly, I do think in the closing, it's a good way to say, here's what the judge is going to instruct you really shortly. And you do that, you instruct them, right? And you can take those definitions and don't draw an objection, but, make them, simplify them a little bit more, tell them what they can and can't do. I mean, the nice thing about closing arguments is typically, unless it's a reptile closing argument that's completely inappropriate, judge kind of lets you do what you want in closing. So I think that's a time where you can prime the jury to say, here's how these questions are going to come out. Oh, by the way, you may want to jump from negligence to damages, but you can't do that because the judge says you can't. And here are these instructions that you're going to get, and prime them. So if something like that happens, which did happen on one of the other panels in our mock jury, one of the jurors said, whoa, we're not allowed to do that. Didn't you hear the instruction? And so it does work. I think it's going to take more attention from defense counsel going forward.
No, I agree. All right, we're going to wrap up with some viewer mail.
I've got viewer mail too. We may want to save some for next time too. But what do you got? Because we're getting questions, particularly as we travel, all kinds of getting worn out with questions. So I just try to write them down and bring them to the podcast. What do you got?
I got one I just got asked the other day, which I thought was good, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Mm-hmm. But when we're teaching our witnesses about the concept of it depends, right? Because a lot of times it's going to be the correct answer to a question is it depends. There was some concern with some of the attorneys that said, well, doesn't that make it look like the witness is being dodgy when they're saying it depends? So kind of what are your thoughts on that? I know you have an answer. I mean, what would you respond as far as how that goes?
I'm going to go on another rant right now. Okay. So you have it depends, right? Which there are more elaborate ways to say that, which I'm going to go over that in a second. Otherwise, it's but pivoting. Okay. Pivoting sucks, right? I've made this very, very clear to the point where I think it's unethical to instruct the witness to do that because they're going to get clobbered. Okay. Experts that have a lot of testimony experience, they can get away with it because they've been down this road before. Yeah. You get an expert that's testified 100 times before. They can play that game all day because they're expert witnesses. This is what they do. You get a fact witness trying to pivot their way out. That's what looks evasive, defensive, and argumentative. Now, where you can get in trouble with it depends is you don't want it to come across like a broken record. Okay. Right. So we give our witnesses, they all mean the same thing. First of all, extend that. That depends on the full set of circumstances. Period. Okay. No, I've never had a juror in 18 years have a problem with that answer. Okay. Other similar, they all mean the same thing, equally as effective. That's not necessarily true in all situations. Right? More simple ones. Sometimes that's the case. Not always. Every situation's different. If any witness rotates through those, boom, 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 you're going to be highly effective. But if the witness starts to pivot and starts yapping, getting their yapper going, you're opening up the door to more counterattack from the cross-examiner, and they're absolutely going to clobber you with it. So it's key to put the witnesses through the type of training that we do and give them those tools so they could switch it up a little bit, right? But here, where the rubber meets the road, sometimes you have a witness. Our producer yelled at me the other day, so I got to be careful with what I say here because I got yelled at. I got dinged. some witnesses are less sophisticated than others. Is that
correct?
Did that come across
That's
okay?
fair. Yes, very
Let's
vanilla.
just leave it at that. If I get in trouble for that, I'm going to quit the podcast. And with a less sophisticated witness, they may have to do it depends, because they don't have the capability to work in these other answers. I don't care. Because at the end of the day, that deposition is going to be successful. Okay. And then if you're at trial, you have the ability to rehab or direct examination that witness. So worst case scenario, they just stick with it depends. And they get through the depth, they survive. It's a C+. You're still alive. You're still in the fight. But if they start trying to explain their way out of things, that's where the train's going to go off the tracks.
Yes. Excellent. Awesome. Very, very good. So, and to your point, I think one of the biggest things about training the witnesses, to your point, is to not make them sound like a broken record, or at least to tell them, hey, answer the question within these parameters, find your own words and your own language as far as how you say that it depends, just don't, but. So I think that's a great point to hammer home for any witness or anybody. What else you got? Right. You got any questions?
I got viewer mail.
Good.
We'll wrap this up in the next 10 minutes. All right. I'm going to give this question to you, but it's authored to me. Dear Bill, I have a case in which I want to badly blame the plaintiff for everything. Is this a bad idea? Are jurors going to get mad at me? Speaking of, it depends.
Yeah.
That's my answer to that one.
Right.
I mean, Steve, you work on, hundreds and hundreds of these cases. There's sometimes if you try to blame the plaintiff, it's going to blow up in your face.
Yeah.
Whereas other times you better blame the plaintiff. I think it just really depends on the type of case you have and really what the facts are, because I think there's cases probably that you really want to blame the plaintiff. And if you remember the concept of piling on, you get a 15-yard penalty for that in football. I think if you do that, jurors can get mad. I think there's a more subtle way to do it, right?
No, I agree. I think a lot of times in those cases that we're talking about, because that's always usually my recommendation, is to just kind of give the jurors a little bit of ammunition, and they'll come to it themselves. Like, you don't need to go up there and just and hammer on the plaintiff. Just sprinkle it in a little bit, and then let the jurors come to it. And then it's less about the attorney piling on and more about the jurors piling on themselves, because they're not stupid. They're going to see it. They're going to be angry. They're going to be upset. So they don't need you to come up there and stoke the flames a lot more. And I can think of a case vividly in my mind right now where we had that situation where it couldn't go too far on this plaintiff because, it would become very, very problematic. So we had to kind of soft pedal it and just highlight the case facts, which then led jurors to say, wow, this person is not good. Well,
that's why I like that retest design. Day one, you can go hard at the plaintiff, see what happens. Day two, you back off, you plant the seed, let the jury water it, maybe focus more on causation and see what happens. See if jurors get mad. That's really the one way to find out. Okay. Last question. I'm totally putting all the pressure on you. You're going to love this. Dear Bill, I need to do some jury research for my case. I want to do a mock trial with you because I want to see the juries deliberate over liability and damages. However, my client wants me to sign up for a survey to get more people filling out questionnaires, but there's no deliberations. What are the pros and cons of both? Wow. I've been seeing this a lot, right?
Yeah.
Meaning a lot more, you get more data, but it's all individual versus doing the mock trial, less data, but you get the dynamics of the deliberation process. Dr. Wood, what do you think?
Well, as a research nerd, I do like the higher sample size, and I do like the, statistical odds in that and being able to get all that information. With that said, you go back and look at literature for years and years and years that shows that individual verdicts, individual decision-making, and group decision-making is vastly different. What someone will do, what someone will say, how someone will act when they're filling out a questionnaire on their individual verdict form, and how they'll actually fill out that and answer that same exact question with the group are completely different. So you might, it would depend on what you're trying to get information on. Are you trying to get perceptions of your witness? Are you trying to get perception of the strength of your case? Okay, well, maybe then getting 100 jurors to fill that out and give their input would be beneficial. But if you're looking for how much exposure you're going to have, how are they going to see negligence? How are they going to see causation? How are they going to interact? You can't do that through a survey. So it's going to be tailored to what is it that you're really trying to find out. And like you said, if you're getting ready to go to war, or you're getting ready to go to trial, you're getting ready to go to mediation, you're going to want that more of that group dynamic of a mock trial.
Yeah, I mean, how many times in the mock trial where, okay, juror number 5 has been pro plaintiff all day. They get into deliberations and they fold like a cheap suit.
Yeah.
Now, what if you only had that preliminary data and you started making jury selection decisions off of that? That could lead to a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, to your point, there's a lot of people that have these very strong opinions on either side of the spectrum. And yeah, when they get into when push comes to shove and they actually have to explain themselves, when they get into a room and 6, 8, well, however many other people are staring at them and say, okay, you have this thought, now back it up with any of the evidence you heard, or explain it in a clear and concise way. They just, and then
I want to go home. I want to go home.
Yeah. So
I want to go home.
I do like it from a certain aspect. I do like the higher numbers, but like you said, it really, going back to what we always say, it depends. It depends on what you're looking for.
I don't think a survey is a bad way, like really early in discovery, to get some preliminary data. The problem is cheap clients want to take that and use it as the gold standard for jury selection. You can't do that.
No, I would highly caution against it. And I would personally not feel comfortable giving recommendations for jury selection if that's all we had. And then a client told me, help me pick a jury, and all I had was that. I would not be very comfortable at all. And I wouldn't put a client in that position, because I wouldn't want them to have a bad outcome based upon bad data.
Yeah. All right. Last issue, and I'm going to let you wrap it up. I'm taking a 4-day weekend off next weekend. Guess who I'm going to go see in concert twice?
I think Metallica? No, it is Metallica, isn't it? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Why is this not our podcast intro? I mean, listen to this. I should play this before witness preps, right? This should be our intro to the podcast. I can barely hear it. Yeah. Should be the intro to the podcast, and we can just rock out for 30 seconds. But I'm going to go see these guys. I'm going to see them twice, 2 times in 3 nights. It's a 4-day music festival, and that's my mental health. I'm not looking at my phone. Here we go. This is what they play at Virginia Tech when the players walk on.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Makes for a pretty intimidating stadium to play in. But that's going to be my 4 days of Metallica, Stone Temple Pilots, several others, really good 90s and 2000 rock bands. And I'm not answering my phone. I'm not doing any podcasts. Imagine if I podcasted from the concert. That could be pretty cool during Metallica, but you couldn't hear a damn thing I was saying.
Yeah, I've seen Metallica in concert. They put on an awesome show. So two times is going to be excellent.
2 full sets.
Full
sets. All right, take us away, dude.
All right. Well, this has been another edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast, brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. As we always say before, go to www.courtroomsciences.com. We have a lot of our podcasts up there, articles, blogs, anything you name it. And if you need to get a hold of us, be Kanasky at courtroomsciences.com or me, S. Wood, at courtroomsciences.com. Thanks for joining us for another edition. We'll see you soon.